I have like early 90s like vibes, like when you get like the pictures at school taken and you'd have that background. You might be too young for that. I don't think you remember the 90s, but
Oh, well, I was born in 1990, so I just turned 30. It's a whole big thing now.
Oh, well, happy 30.
Thank you. It's really nice to speak with you and meet you this way. I've been a fan of the podcast for a long time, so I'm just excited. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I'm really glad you came on. I like everything that you wanted to talk about. I was like, gosh, yes, Sunny, I want to talk to you about this, like art and visual impairment and the work you're doing with Nord and with Ran. And let's start there. Let's start with what you have, because I spent the morning trying to understand what you have, and I'm not smart enough in the mornings for this. And I could.
Full disclosure, like the fog is real today, so.
Oh, good. That'll be fun.
So you know the deal.
Okay, well, the two of us will handhold each other through everything, and anyone listening are, we're not going to apologize. We're sick. This is how it goes. So no apologies.
Sounds good. Cool. Thank you again. So NORD is the National Organization for Rare Disorders. It's an organization that was created by patient advocates for people that have rare conditions. It actually got its start back in 1983, where they helped pass the Orphan Drug Act. You can read all about that on the NORD website, which is rarediseases.org. And within the last, it's fairly recent that I don't really know the whole time frame off the top of my head, but here fairly recently, as far as relative time is concerned, they just created the Rare Action Network, which is an Paranet sort of organization that connects rare disease advocates in all 50 states. Or at least they're trying to get people in all 50 states. I think there are a few states where we don't have leaders yet, but usually what they want to try to do is in every state they want to have 1 to 2 leaders. One person is the state ambassador, which is they're in charge of RAN for that state. And then there's the community engagement liaison, which is the position that I volunteer as, where basically I'm in charge of helping to engage the community. So I do a lot of social outreach and basically the same sort of patient advocacy that I've been doing for the last 5 years or so, but more of an official capacity now. So have you ever heard of Rare Disease Day?
Have, but I'm curious about what this involves, because it sounds like you guys really do need people to come in and do this. And I'd love for, if you're listening to this, head over to our show notes at invisiblenotbroken.com, explicitly sick. I have everything just linked up right at the top. So if you want to know more about Sunny and her condition, want to see Sunny's artwork, it's all right up there. And so is Rare and Nord is right there at the top as well, if you're interested in this. So what is the kind of time commitment? What are you guys looking for someone to actually do this? What are your days like doing this?
Yeah, actually, that was something that I was really nervous about at first, because I kind of fell into this position. I had joined, they have virtual discussion groups to connect, patients of rare diseases in the states with their state ambassadors. And I had joined one of those virtual discussion groups. And as we were talking, I guess they just really liked my gusto. So they asked if I'd take the position for community engagement liaison because they were looking for somebody. And at first I thought, hold on a minute. I've tried to work before. Didn't work out great. So I talked with the person that was in charge of hiring for this position, Kristen Angel. She's amazing. Shout out to Kristen. She does a lot of great work. But I expressed to her my concern that, I may not be able to keep up with this commitment. And she said, we totally understand. We work with rare disease patients. We're not going to judge you if you become sick. And she said that they're only asking 4 to 6 hours per month. So that's doable. Oh, I'm sorry.
Have you had lunch yet?
Yes, Alexa, I've had lunch.
We're going to talk about Alexa in a moment. We will definitely get to the robot uprising and why that is not a bad thing for sick people. We will certainly get there. Hi, Alexa.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I actually have your audio coming through that speaker, so
It's never, I can't tell you how many times I've been talking. I'm not going to say the name because I have a different set up, but there's a certain name you can like say, and like a genie, she appears with no useful information whatsoever. But I can't tell you how many times I have talked to someone on a podcast, been recording, and all of a sudden the little bar shows up like, hi, how can I help you? I know I've never helped you before, but I'm sure that in the middle of this interview, I could totally, oh, there she is. Oh my God, I didn't even have to say her name and she still came. That is like yeah, Robot Uprising needs to get a little better. Yeah, it's Philip C.K. Dick knew what he was talking about. We should be scared. I'm sorry. So 4 to 6 hours a month. We're back.
We're so rudely interrupted by my robot assistant.
And then mine. That was great. They're talking. Maybe they'll become friends. I don't know.
Yeah, they're on to us. Anyway, of course I was really nervous, but when she said 4 to 6 hours, that's really not that bad. I thought, I can do that within a month, So,
does it actually end up being like that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is that a realistic time commitment? Is that what it actually ends up being?
I actually just got started a few months ago. So far, so good. Yeah. It hasn't been bad at all, really. I'm kind of a go-getter. I'm more of the kind of person where I overdo things a lot. So I've been kind of having to reel myself back and saying, look, you're seeing all of these really great volunteer opportunities, but slow down before you hurt yourself. So, but for the most part, no, they have not been demanding more time from me than what they've projected would be the time frame. So I actually do have a meeting with them right after this interview. Where I'm going to be doing a little presentation for them. So that's one of the hours of my time for this month.
I will try not to kidnap you afterwards. I usually do end up kidnapping guests for like.
It's not until 3 o'clock.
I will try to be good.
It's okay. I'll probably wind up wanting to talk more anyway, so it won't be all your fault.
It often is. There'll be a nice change of pace. So what I want to know more about you, I definitely want to get back to these different organizations, but I want to know a little bit about you, like what you have, because I could not figure it out. I went on to a whole bunch of websites that were way too smart for me. If I was that smart, I'd be a doctor. Please help me out.
I totally understand. Yeah, and that was the big issue that I had first starting out, trying to learn more about my condition itself. That's what got me into patient advocacy, was there's just really not much out there for, layman's to understand what's going on. It's just, I had to learn from medical journals getting started, which was really difficult. But essentially, I've got a rare condition called septo-optic dysplasia, which you have to have at least 2 of 3 indicators to get the diagnosis. I have all 3. So essentially, I've got optic nerve hypoplasia, which I'll explain in a second, panhypopituitarism, which I'll also get into, and I'm missing something called the septum pellucidum, which is a membrane that kind of goes in the middle of your brain. It's just gone. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of information on that, so we don't know how much that's affecting me. There are some medical journals out there that claim that it might impact your ability to sense danger, so I could be a little bit more gullible than some people, according to that one medical journal that I had found. But for the most part, it's essentially not the biggest deal that I've got going on, so they just kind of, it's fine. That's how it goes when you've got complicated conditions like this. Some stuff just gets, you'll live. So first, the optic nerve hypoplasia. Essentially, my optic nerve didn't develop right. I've got faulty wiring, if you want to say that. And as it malformed when I was, developing, it pressed up against my pituitary gland. So that's what caused the panhypopituitarism. Panhypopituitarism, we're going to break it down into 3 parts to kind of help explain it. Pan means all, hypo means deficient, and pituitarism means having to do with the pituitary gland. So I'm deficient in most of my pituitary hormones because the optic nerve pressed up against my pituitary gland and wouldn't let it develop right. Doctors have said that essentially it might as well not even be there. My levels are so low. So my body doesn't make any of the hormones necessary for survival, or not sufficient enough amounts of those hormones. So I've got to take a whole bunch of pills throughout the day. I've got 3, with my speaker, which we'll get into more, 3 reminders that pop up throughout the day saying, hey, take your meds. And then I have to do an injection before bed of growth hormone as well. So that's really complicated. The optic nerve hypoplasia itself has basically made my eyesight worse than that of a 60-year-old. What eyesight I do have, actually, because I'm actually blind in both peripherals as well. So with my eye issues, I can't drive, which is really limiting, and that's a pain. But for the most part, I can see well enough to do things like artwork and see your lovely face here on Zoom. So it's nice. The biggest issue with my condition is definitely the panhypopituitarism, because even somebody with just one hormone deficiency like hypothyroidism would tell you that the symptoms that you experience, while they're really vague and kind of hard to pin down, can be really debilitating. And with the panhypopituitarism, not only do I have hypothyroidism, but I've got secondary adrenal insufficiency, which in and of itself is a pretty serious condition and can be life-threatening. I actually have to carry an injection kit, an emergency injection kit with me at all times in case something were to happen, where if I was in a situation where a normal person's body would go into shock, my body doesn't make the hormone cortisol, so it doesn't have that reaction. So it doesn't know how to manage the levels of electrolytes in your blood and your blood pressure. So my blood pressure would drop suddenly, and I could go into a coma and die if I don't have this shot injected into me right away. That's actually one of the big advocacy things I'm working on right now is even though I have that shot with me at all times, if I were in a situation where I wasn't with somebody who knows how to give me the shot, if an EMT were to come to address my situation, they would not be allowed to give me that medication. And that's not something they carry with them in the ambulance either. And it can be a matter of 30 minutes whether or not I live or die in that situation. So I'm working with somebody from Debbie, or I think her name is Debbie. I'm sorry if I got your name wrong. But it's Danny's Dose is the name of the organization. They work with EMS protocols in many different states trying to get emergency medications like this approved for EMT workers to give to the patients that need it. But yeah, that's what anyway, I was talking about symptoms. So many tangents. There's just so much to cover with this condition.
It's like the worst of like almost all the conditions that I know of. It's like all of the worst of it just right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, luckily I've got, I don't deal with something like chronic pain every day, so that's nice that I don't have to deal with something that physically painful. I just get really, really physically tired. When we talk about fatigue, I'm not just sleepy. I feel like I ran 3 miles even though I just slept for 8 hours. So
we need a better word. There needs to be a word that like the temporarily abled cannot like use as like, oh, I'm fatigued. It's like, no. If you have never had to take a nap after a shower, you are not fatigued. That's not your word. Like, we need a better word.
Totally agree with you on that, because I've if I had $1 for every time that my telling somebody, oh man, I'm dealing with so much fatigue today, that they responded with, I'm tired too, I'd have enough money to, pay for healthcare.
Yes, we'll get to living in the United States with healthcare, I promise. I think it's a subject we're both very passionate about, especially right now as we're entering the election cycle. Or we have entered it and I'm just in denial. Anyway.
Well, actually, I can tie that into the whole artwork with low vision. I've been doing a lot of political cartoons lately.
You have. I love your political cartoons.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that you've seen them.
Yes, I have. I dig them. I actually started following you on Redbubble so I can keep up with all of your illustrations.
Thanks. I haven't posted anything on there in a while, but
yeah. I went on there like a few months ago and I found out I'd been selling stuff on there that I had no idea about. It's like I have not paid attention. I throw my illustrations up there, or I mess with my old photo shoots and I throw them up there and it's like, oh well, they're actually selling things.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Go Redbubble. I'm a fan. That's a pretty nice little thing there.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I like that you can actually set your prices to where like you don't make any money off of it, because I do a lot of stuff related to disability on there, and I just don't feel right making money off of that right now. So people can go on there and get the lowest price possible with just the Redbubble price point. And I don't make any money off of it, but once in a while I'll see where somebody had bought a print and I'm like, oh, I will that helps somebody out.
Okay. I think you should be charging for your stuff, but that's personal opinion. I think your work is really great, and I think people would pay for it. It's your labor, and you're putting your creativity in it. It's
I
pretty
think I see it
amazing.
more of like a charity thing that I do, making
Mm.
it as cheap as possible.
I think it's fantastic work you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So how is this working for you? 'Cause I know that a lot of us who are spoonies, chronically ill, disabled, a lot of us do have artistic tendencies, and we all have our little quirks and ways that we still are able to either, like, I had to quit photography and move to something else,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I
Mm-hmm.
have to do all these things with, like, since I do illustration, I work on a program where it does like half screen, so whatever I do on half the screen appears on the other half, so I only have to do half the canvas. What are some of your tricks for being able to still be an artist with your conditions?
Yeah, I totally feel you having to give up on, one of your passions to something that you can handle better with your health. I actually did leather working for a little while.
Oh,
I loved it, but yeah, it's so physically demanding. I hadn't anticipated that. After a little while, I had made a few leather journals. People loved them. They sold like hotcakes. And then, with all that hammering that you've got to do with the leather working tools, just I got physically sick. I had to stop. So that was sad to have to put those tools away, especially after they cost so darn much.
oh,
But anyway, they're in a box. Maybe I'll get them out someday. But you're totally right about having to find something that you can do within your limitations. So right now I'm working on making a bunch of masks. They're obviously selling pretty well right now. So I'm working on making some Halloween ones. And the great thing about this creative outlet is there are a bunch of different steps in the process, and some take more energy than others. So on a super low energy day, I might be able to sit there and just like cut the ties, because I use cloth ties for the masks that you tie around. I'll show you what I'm talking about here if I can grab one. So like these.
oh, those are darling.
Thanks.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love it.
all tied together right now, but I could sit there and like cut the length of ties that I'm going to need and do a bunch of those in bulk. On a day where I might have a little bit more energy, I can actually cut out the pattern itself. So and then of course I'll have to wait for a day where I have a few more spoons laying around, where I can actually put the mask together and finish them. So that's kind of how I manage what I'm able to do with my creative ability. If I've got limited energy some days, which happens a lot, and I can get into that a little bit more here in a minute. But I think that a lot of us do definitely have that creative tendency, which is great because there are some things that you can do when you're not feeling well. I can't remember what I was watching. I think it was a Netflix documentary recently about fringe science cures, and there was a girl
Oh,
that had a illness. Yeah, oh, it's a
yeah,
fun one.
yeah. Unwell. Was that the one you saw?
Yes,
Yeah, I had thoughts. I'd love your thoughts. I have thoughts.
I binged it in like 3 days. It was a great show. I love learning about that kind of thing. Another one of my favorite podcasts is Oh No, Ross and Carrie. Have you ever heard of that? They
No,
they investigate like fringe science, spirituality, and claims of the paranormal. You should check them out. They're
I will
amazing.
totally check that out. Yes.
That's what when I saw the Unwell documentary or docu series, I decided that this is going to be right up my alley. um, the placebo effect is great. I think that's what my thought process is on on that whole series. But there was a girl in there that had a chronic illness, and she was doing cross stitching. That was the B
Yes.
episode.
That was the
Yes.
episode. I love her embroidery. Oh my gosh, she is
Yeah.
so talented.
It was beautiful, and I was thinking, yeah, she understands. When you're limited in what you can do, you've got to find something that's enriching, where you're just stuck to the couch or the bed or wherever you're at. We find a way, I guess, and art is a great way to enrich your mind without running yourself too ragged.
That's a beautiful statement. It's one of the things that frustrates me the most when you hear people who are, I call it temporarily abled. Like, people are temporarily
You never
abled,
know when you're going to get hit by a bus, right?
and if you're really lucky, you're going to get old enough that this will affect you. So either you're lucky or you're unlucky, but one way or another, this temporary state of able body will come to an end. So might as well plan for it. Why was I saying this? Oh no, I forgot. Oh, that's so sad. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I almost canceled on you today because I woke up at 2 a.m. with my arm was like out of its socket hanging off to the side. I woke up and had to like relocate an arm, and then my husband had to relocate it later. Like, I'm so loopy today. I really apologize. There was a point to that and now I can't remember what it was. Hierarchy of needs. So there are the people who are temporarily able, they don't get what being disabled is about. And then there's like that whole not my tax dollars people. And there's this idea of like, oh, people take advantage of us. They're lazy. And I'm like, you have no idea what I would do to work again. As long as it was within the moral bounds of not hurting someone else, I would literally do almost anything to work again, which is why these wellness industries do so well, is we're so desperate to get back to something that, and for a lot of us it's, you know, to work because that's what meaning is to us, what purpose is to us. We haven't found other things yet a lot of times when we're clawing our way back, but we want purpose, and whatever that is, whether that's art or work. And I think that we discount how much people need purpose.
Yes, and I think that's another reason why the whole process of trying to win a disability case or obtain disability, especially in the United States, it's such a dehumanizing process because
oh my
not
gosh,
only
have you done it?
I won my disability like a year
that is
or so
brutal.
ago. It is, and it was a 2-year-long process.
Oh, I'm
for
so
me,
sorry.
which I don't even apologize, because there are people that take almost a decade to win their disability case. And I mean, there are some people that go their entire lives without winning their case because they just didn't have the energy to fight.
I'm convinced that you cannot do disability, get your disability case through if you're disabled without help. Like if you're able to do that on your own, you are
that's actually a really
not
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way. I had so much help. I had my mom was working on it 30 hours a week with me, and I was not able to get through the paperwork. Like she really took her hand. Like I don't, if you've never done this before, take a look. If you're like talking about all the people who are getting disability for free, like anyone who is dealing with this, trust me, there's an easier way to get that little amount of money a month. Like you could literally do almost anything else for less time, less stress to get that small amount every month.
Yeah. I eventually got to the point where I had to get a lawyer. It wasn't moving along anymore. And you can only file an appeal so many times before you just, like you said, you need help. It's just too much.
If you want any advice on that, my best advice is to go in person. We would have been denied, except I went in person and I realized halfway through the woman hadn't even looked at my file. And
wow.
So I was like, okay, you don't know what I have. You don't know what's going on. She's like, oh, well, I kind of skimmed it. I'm like, okay, then let me just walk you through my day. And I just told her like step by step through my day, and it was approved within like a few weeks. But if I had done what they wanted me to do, which is do it online, and I didn't catch that she hadn't read my file, there's no way I would have gotten through.
Yeah. It seems like without the help of a lawyer, it's really difficult to get it done too. Like I did wind up going into the office at a certain point in the disability process before I got my lawyer, and it is a lot more personal when you do go into the office, and it seems like it helps quite a bit. But it took a lawyer for me to win my case. And essentially, when I did win my disability case, the judge had determined that, and this is really important for people that don't have a disability to understand, she determined that even though there are some things that I can do, the unpredictability of my condition is just so ridiculous that no employer would put up with that.
Yeah.
So even though I do have enough energy some days, and I'll show you my calendar now, where I my green screen.
Oh my God.
So I've got some green stickers.
I can see it. That's a lot. And a great calendar. I love the Golden Girls.
Me too. I'm going to turn off my green screen for a second so that you can actually see this properly.
I think it's one of the hard things to explain to people who aren't sick, is that just because it's about the not being able to do things all the time at a definite date.
Yes. Yeah. And like there are red stickers on here that I wish it wasn't so hard to see this, but maybe I'll post a picture of this to my Twitter.
There you go.
Yeah, at Insomnia Doodles. I don't mean to plug for my personal attention, but I want to share this with you.
Please plug your stuff. It's all linked up too. If you go to the show notes, everything's just right there at the very top.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll post. I'll pin this to the top of my Twitter for a while too, so people can see it. But so there's some red stickers here. The red stickers represent like a totally bad flare-up where I couldn't do anything at all. I was stuck in bed or on the couch. The orange ones represent a day where I'm kind of like halfway there. You know, symptoms are pretty bad, but I can still get some stuff done. The blank ones are what I would call my normal day. I hesitate to say just normal in general because my normal is going to be totally different from somebody else's normal. And then the green ones are when I'm having a pretty good day. Like, I've got energy to get stuff done. And then, of course, I've got some that are kind of mix and match where something, I might start out having a terrible day and then I just feel better out of nowhere, or the other way around. So the reason that I keep a calendar where I mark all these down all the time is because sometimes when you get into like a long like week of symptoms that are so bad, it can feel like it's been going on forever. It's nice to be able to look back and say, no, see, last week I had a pretty good day. You know, it's this will pass like it has before, and it feels a lot less exhausting in the moment.
That is brilliant. Like I started tracking it because I found out the week before my period was insane as far as like dislocations and heart stuff. It was like a week of like I should be in the hospital. And so keeping track of the stuff, especially if you're an owner of ovaries, can be very helpful to know like how your cycle affects. Yeah. Apple Watch has been fantastic for that. Thank you, Apple. I wish Apple would get together with more understanding of disability and chronic illness and start creating some better trackers for people with chronic illness to keep track of their symptoms.
I think I read where they just added symptoms to the health app recently. I haven't checked it out yet, but I saw it in one of the notes. So.
Yeah, we're getting the iOS 7 in a few months, so I'm like, yay! I'm a tech fiend. It's I think a lot of us with chronic illness are really into technology. Just as like, wow, this could actually make me more autonomous. Like the idea of autonomous driving is my most cherished hope. Is I will be able to have a car that will drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with like my eyesight issues, I'm so reliant on other people with, I mean, I do have my tricycle. I've got an amazing electric tricycle that gets me around town. I can't go very far on it, but an electric car that drives itself would be amazing. I could actually leave the town once in a while by myself.
Yes, I have a son who just moved back home, so it's been really lovely to have him here to help drive me to appointments and things. But I also miss going through the redwoods. I mean, even in post-COVID world, like we as family will still go for like a drive through the redwoods and just like, you know, look at pretty things and go back home. It's so nice to be able to do that. And if you have like autonomous driving, you don't have to wait for someone else to be in the mood.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And you have your robot army. Tell me about how you have Alexa all programmed.
So here's my Echo that is next to my computer at all times. I've got one in the kitchen and then I've got one in the bathroom. And I've got it set up to where every day for my medication times, which is once in the morning at 8 a.m., right in the morning when I am woken up, the first thing it says is, you know, good morning, take your medications, time to get up, here's the news. And then right after that, at noon is the next one. When I take my next dose of medications, it'll just pop up a reminder saying, hey, it's time to take your meds. And then I take my meds. And then you heard earlier at 1 p.m. reminding me to take, you know, have lunch if I haven't had lunch yet, because it's easy to forget sometimes. And then at 4 p.m. I get another reminder telling me, hey, it's time to take your meds again. I don't have a reminder set for my bedtime routine because I've fallen into that habit so easily now that I don't forget to take my shot anymore. So I don't need a reminder for that one. But I definitely have all of those medication reminders to get me through the day, because if I miss a dose of my medications, my hormone levels are off and it's not good.
Hormones are like, if you haven't had these experiences yet, they're responsible for most of our bodily, like it's not just like grumpy or not grumpy, like this is so responsible for like our adrenaline, our like how our gut processes food, how we think, our attentions, like our hormones are almost more important than like most of what we gave credit to the brain for.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, it's a pretty integral part of our brain itself, the pituitary gland. So if that's not functioning properly, your body isn't. I mean, my endocrinologist put it pretty well when she said your full-time job is being your pituitary gland. So
it had one job.
well, what are you doing in there? Yeah, as long as, and the thing that really stinks is, and I try not to be, come across as a complainer, but this is just the cold hard truth here. The synthetic medications that I have to take to replace those hormones are not anywhere close to the real thing. I mean, they're obviously close to the real thing, but you experience symptoms regardless, even when you're taking these medications, because they don't exactly replace what a normal person's body would be making. If you look at the blood work, the levels might, look within range, but it's not nearly the same as like a normal person's body secreting those hormones at the time that they would need to secrete them, especially with something as complicated as adrenaline, with the cortisol. You're going to have ups and downs throughout the day. You're not always going to need cortisol at 4 p.m. every day. You may need it before or after that, or at certain points throughout the day when maybe something a little bit more stressful has happened. Fingers crossed that a cortisol pump will be approved by the FDA for treatment soon. I don't know.
That'd be nice.
That would be nice. It's still just experimental. It's hard to get a doctor to prescribe it, and insurance doesn't want to cover it still. But essentially, the cortisol pump would help, just like a diabetic's glucose
Insulin pump. You're good. Don't worry.
Insulin pump. That's the word.
I told you, between the two of us, we were going to be fine. We got each other's backs here.
Thank you. But yeah, it kind of works in the same sort of way, to kind of keep cortisol throughout the body, but or throughout the day in the body, because taking the oral pill 3 times a day at certain, like, basically 4-hour intervals is not the same. So, what were we talking about?
Oh, well, you were just saying something about I don't want to complain, which I just want to facepalm until I go unconscious when I hear things like that. So I'm going to bring you to the people pleasing, because I have this theory that a lot of us who have chronic illness and disability, we feel this need to earn our place. And it could lead off into us lighting ourselves on fire to warm other people up. And I certainly am getting over that now, but it took like 40 something years. And I kind of wanted to hear more about what you have to say about eagerness to please in the workplace and what that does when you're disabled.
Yeah. Oh, we can get into the workplace. For sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I thought we would.
Yeah. Before I get into that, you're totally right. I shouldn't be worried about, sounding like I'm complaining when I'm talking about the basic stuff that I go
Not
through.
a read at all. It's just something that, like, I hear you say it and I'm like, I need to work on that too. Like, that's something that I keep apologizing for. It's like, you know what?
And I think
I'll
that comes
apologize
from,
if I'm cruel.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think that instinct to kind of be apologetic comes from the fear of pushing people away when we're being so open and honest about our conditions, because it makes people uncomfortable and they don't want to talk about stuff like that, So I think that's what pushes us to want to apologize. But let's talk about work. I used to work at Kroger, it was a wonderful job. Back before I decided hey, your health condition is serious enough that I think this qualifies as a disability. Before I come to that conclusion, I was trying to work. So I got a job at Kroger, and when I was applying for that job, I told the interviewer that I had a health condition that may eventually cause me to not be able to work anymore. And he was really understanding, and he said, we'll give you a chance anyway. And my immediate response was, can I give you a hug? Because I was just so overwhelmed. He let me give him a hug. Wonderful guy. And then I worked for them for about 8 months before I wound up having to quit. And I think about 6 months in, I started feeling more symptoms, and I was starting to have a lot more limitations about what I could do at work. I had worked my way up the ladder at that store very quickly because I do have a really good work ethic and I work very hard. I am a people pleaser, so I wanted to give that job my all, and I did. And got to the point where they had hired on a new manager, and she also saw what I was able to do and what I was willing to do and my gusto at work. And she wanted to give me a management position in one of the departments at the store. And when she first said that to me, I was, really honored. I was flattered to think, somebody trusts me well enough to trust me with a whole part of the store. This is awesome. And I had told her without thinking, yeah, I can do that. And then as we do. And then I realized, wait a minute, if symptoms keep getting worse like they've been doing, there are going to be some days where I'm not going to be able to come to work. I may have to leave early. I may have to skip a couple of days to recover. If I'm the only person in charge of this department, which I would be the only person running it, except for, maybe a small employee stocking shelves every once in a while, it would really harm that department and then in turn the whole store if I fell behind. So I was really concerned about that, and I thought maybe I shouldn't take on this management position. So I went in on one of my days off and asked to speak with her about this. And I went up to the office and we sat down and I said, hey, did the other manager tell you about my health condition that I had warned him about when he hired me? And she said, no. And I said, well, let me explain that to you. And so I laid my heart out, which anybody that has a condition as serious as, or any sort of chronic condition at all, knows how hard it is to be this vulnerable to somebody about what you go through. Admitting that you have something that holds you back like this just sucks. But I laid my heart out to her and I told her exactly what it was like to have this condition, how it affected me. And then I said, even though I would really love to take on this position and I'm honored that you considered me for this, I know that it would be detrimental to the store for me to be the manager here. So I'm going to take a step back and let somebody else take this role. And she looked me right in the eyes and said, you know what I think? And I said, no, what do you think? She goes, I think you just don't want to do it. And I don't know how I kept my cool in that moment, but I did. I felt, the heat in your face and your ears, and hands started to shake. But I kept my cool and I looked at her and I said, you've misjudged me. And I said, I understand that it's got to be frustrating for you as an employer to have an employee that isn't doing what you want them to do. Imagine what it's like having a body that doesn't do what you want it to do. And I said, I'm sorry, but I cannot take this position. And she didn't seem like she really understood how much she had insulted me in that moment. I just wanted to grab her by her skinny, ableist shoulders and shake. But I kept my cool. And she tried to ask me to take on the position again anyway, and I said, nope, sorry, I can't take that on, that wouldn't be responsible, and then I left. And I cried when I got home. I cried and I cried. But I continued to work there. She continued to discriminate blatantly against me. She knew that I wasn't supposed to be working in refrigeration units. I had a doctor tell me that I can't work in there because one of my issues is asthma, and that had caused me to have an asthma attack, which had caused me to have an adrenal crisis at one point, which put me in the ER and overnight in the hospital. So after that, he said, no more refrigeration units. And I had told her that. I told all my bosses that. And so one night she scheduled me to work in grocery alone and in the dairy department by myself, and also told me to take all of the stock that had been ordered in for the produce department to the produce department. So I looked at her and I said, I'm not supposed to be in refrigeration units. I can't work the dairy department. And she looked at me and she goes, oh, you'll figure it out. And just sent me off. They were having a milk sale that night, so it was going to be bad if I couldn't, keep that stocked. Luckily, my coworkers are freaking amazing. I had told a friend of mine that worked over in the meat department what was going on about the dairy department, and she became visibly upset, and she said, just don't worry about the dairy department. We'll take care of it. And I think after that, she must have said something to somebody, because that manager that had been pulling that crap on me, which I think was retaliation for not doing what she wanted me to do, she just left me alone after that. So something was changed that night. But I continued to work there until my symptoms became so bad that I couldn't even stay standing at the front of the store. Got to the point where I asked them to let me have a chair to sit in, and I was getting dizzy just even sitting in the chair. So that was when I had to put in my 2 weeks notice, and then I just didn't come back after that, which is unfortunate, but I tried, and I'm proud of myself for trying. But I think my whole point of telling that story is that there is some discrimination that you can face in the workforce. And my biggest regret was not calling the union rep on her after that whole situation. And I hope that somebody listening to that keeps that in mind. If you're in the same situation, do something about it. Don't roll over and just let them get away with it like I did.
It's so hard though. We're so trained to try to be likable, and your story illustrates how likability is survival for people like us. If you weren't likable, if you didn't have all these other employees who liked you and cared for your well-being, you would have been in a tremendously horrible situation, especially if you had like a family to feed at home, or you had like that was how you were going to pay rent that month, and like you were, you know, unfortunate what you had to deal with, but fortunate that you didn't have this tremendous pressure that you would have to like put your health at risk to get that paycheck. And that's something that's so dangerous here in the United States. And I always run into this wall when I'm talking to people who don't live here, is how cruel our laws are. And people think, oh, we have the ADA. It's like, that doesn't have teeth. There's no teeth to the ADA. We can make complaints and we can try, but all they have to do is say they're trying. That's all the company has to do. And so they're making reasonable accommodations, and that's whatever they feel is reasonable. It's super frustrating. Like, we need universal income. We need actual medication that we can afford. We need to be able to go to the emergency room without going bankrupt. You know, we need these safety measures for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that I'm on Medicaid now, since I'm on disability. Man, my growth hormone shot is, I can't say what the name and the total cost is for it, but the one that I was on before the one that I'm on right now was $2,500 for a 28-day supply.
That sounds about right. Yeah, my father's
who can afford that?
My father's treatment is $20,000, and it was every month to keep him alive. My drugs were around $2,000 a month, and the sneaky little thing is I do have disability and I have Medicaid, but because I have my husband's insurance, and his insurance will only cover us after we spend $6,000, and they'll only cover to 80%. Whatever my insurance says no to, Medicaid's like, nope, not touching it. So I have to pay the $6,000 deductible, and I have to pay the 20% no matter what. So it's like these little things that you're like, nope, still not working.
The really cruel thing is there are people that can't get married because of that exact situation.
Yes, that's that is very, very true. There are a lot of people who cannot get married, and part of the reason I love my husband, we're very in love, but I'm not a married person. Like, getting married was not a thing that I'm super excited about, but I'm happy to be married to my husband. But part of the reason we got married was it was before the ACA. So the only way I could get health insurance, because I had pre-existing conditions, was to get married. Yeah. There was no other way I could get health insurance. And now our current administration is trying to get it, and then
yeah.
Did you want to do that one? Because like we could do wellness industry, and I could like, I mean, my blood pressure, if you can't tell by how slow I'm talking, like my blood pressure is super low right now. And we can get my blood pressure just right back up there. If you want to talk the RNC or the wellness industry, I could probably get my blood pressure up to human again.
No, I could rant all day long about selfish politicians that don't understand what it's like to have a medical condition.
Or don't understand what it's like to have a medical condition that you don't just have taken care of. Like, there's a lot of them who are sick, but they're Kennedys. It's like, no one's going to let you be sick or wait in a hospital room.
Speaking of Kennedy, he actually had Addison's disease, which is a form of adrenal deficiency. So that's...
There's a lot. And what's weird is like you hear of like a lot of these people like later, like, oh, they had this disability, but they hid it. And it's like, this is, this is where the, like, we get this internalized ableism of like, oh, we have this, we better like I spent, I was a photographer for 10 years, and I spent about, probably the last 3 years hiding my disability, like not using a cane in public, only in private. Like, crying after people would leave my studio, just like being in tears. And it was so stupid because the second I was open about it, everyone's like, no, you shoot from the wheelchair. We love your work. Like, go ahead and be in the wheelchair. No worries. And then like all of the like the strong, able-bodied people would show up early for their shoots and unpack my studio for me. Like they just automatically show up and do that. And they're like, as soon as I was done, they're like, no worries. And they would like pack up my studio for me. Like it was amazing the level of support I got that I was not expecting. It was like this level of grace.
Yeah. Yep. And it is, yeah, you were totally right about that. Luckily I've got my partner Justin that helps me out with things. Sometimes I like to set up at the local farmers market, and so he has to set up like the overhead, like the canopy to keep the sun off of me and stuff, and I sit there and sell my stuff for a few hours, and then he takes it all down, and we go home. And honestly, I think the best compliment that I had ever gotten was from my sister's abusive ex-husband, because he was lashing out at all of us. Oh yeah, it was a whole thing. He was trying really hard to be mean. So he got on Facebook and made a fake account and accused me of not being disabled because I set up at the farmer's market.
Wow. Wow.
Yep.
Oh
so I'm just thinking, like, first of all, I'm not the one setting up that tent. Second of all, you have no idea the backlash that I have to deal with from my own body afterwards, for just sitting there for a few hours, interacting with people and selling things, staying in the same place, you know, quote unquote working for that long. There is retaliation from your own body when you've got a condition like mine that I don't share on social media, so people don't get to see that part. That aside, what do people expect people with a disability to do with their lives? Like, they just think that we sit at home all day and just literally want to do nothing all the time? Like, even though it physically harms me to go out and do some certain things, I will do them anyway because we have to live a little. You know?
I mean, that's where the whole inspiration porn thing comes from. Yes. That it's like, either we are dying and not doing anything, we're just like devolving into our beds, which, yes, fine, that's what I'm doing today, point made.
Yeah, it happens.
But like all we have to do is like breathe, and they're like, oh my god, you're so inspiring, you're like breathing. It's like, no. If I'm actually doing something, go ahead and be in. That's cool. If I did something inspiring, cheers, thank you, I appreciate that I'm inspiring, but you don't get to call me inspiring because I sat up, breathed, ate, you know, like that stuff drives me, and I just can't. Like, or you're so strong. I hate that. You know who I think is strong is Malala. Like, that's a woman who, she's now a young woman. She made a choice. There was an easy way out, and then there was a really hard way that was dangerous. And she knew how dangerous it was. She was threatened for years. She still kept making that choice. That's inspiring. That's strong. If I was given a choice on this body or not, or, you know, like Giselle Bundcham's, I would not be choosing this. This is not, at no point would I go, yes, I will. I would like to make my life this much harder and more painful. That's great. Yeah.
It's a little off topic, but I get cracked up when people talk about, like, there's this whole theological philosophy that we get to choose the life that we have. Like, it's a part of reincarnation. And I'm thinking, I'd like to have a talk with my past life self because this is some bullshit right here.
Oh my God. Okay, so my sister and I have this whole bit going because I read this one thing on, like, discipline is self-love for your future self. And so now she always like calls me, she says, so how's that bitch past self of yours? I'm like, she is such a lazy bitch. She got nothing done. She assumed future person was going to be able to handle everything. I don't know what is wrong with her, but I have words for her. Yeah. That's our little, we're always talking about how evil our past selves are to our future selves. It was supposed to be inspiring. Now it's a comedy bit.
Oh yeah. Which is, if you don't laugh, you cry. We all, something that I've noticed about the chronic illness community, we have a great sense of humor.
I don't know what else to do.
Nope, I totally agree.
I mean, my kids are some of the funniest people I ever meet too. It's like, I think that like whoever is around us has to be pretty fun. Like the people I'm actually close to, that like I have acquaintances, and then I have my people. My people are hilarious, all of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, by the way, shout out to Katrina. I love you. She's my
Oh,
friend that told me about your podcast a while back.
oh, Katrina Strum?
No, different Katrina. But
Okay.
she's got
Hi,
EDS
Katrina.
as well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
I
think that's how she
viscerally
found your
feel that.
podcast.
I
Yeah. So
viscerally
she
feel that to a high level. Yes.
so I
Yeah, I
told
was
her that I'd
doing.
give her a shout out at some point during the podcast because she's an even bigger fan than I am.
I'm really flattered and happy. You know that we've now split apart. We're a network now, so it's no
Yeah.
longer. I run Explicitly Sick now, and then we have a whole bunch of other hosts coming on to run their podcast. So it's been really. It had to happen. I got way too sick to run the podcast.
Sure.
Like when
I
you were,
was wondering.
yeah, when you were talking about like, oh, I'm doing this, and I'm disabled. I'm like, I know that person. I viscerally understand that person, which is I'm too sick to work. So I'm going to start a podcast, a business. I'm going to write a novel. I'm going to raise kids. I'm going to have dogs and chickens, and I'm going to have a small farm, and I will still clean everything and do like I don't know what goes on in our brains. That's like you are too sick to work, so therefore you should do a lot of free labor, all the free labor.
Yeah, you're totally right. You are absolutely right because. Yeah,
I'm not calling you out. I'm calling me out on this. I
know.
Absolutely not. It's when you said that, I'm like, oh man, we are same cloth here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so funny because that is immediately what I did too. When I won my disability case, I'm like, time to write a book and start a podcast and do all this advocacy work. You got chickens now. Somebody gave you chickens. You're going to love those chickens for life. They lasted about a year. And then I wound up giving them to somebody else.
So much longer than if they had been a KFC.
Yeah.
We have
well, but I just couldn't do it anymore.
6 girls out in the back, and we have a gate, so they're supposed to stay in the upper garden, which I don't know why. They have a beautiful garden, lots of things to eat, all sorts of places to hide. They want to come down to the patio where my wolf sleeps. They want to come down here. I don't get it, but we have this little sign that is the little velociraptor sign from Jurassic Park that we keep on their little gate, and they just sit above it and just like look all yeah, the wolf caught one once, and nothing happened. No, like seriously, this is not a scary podcast. My wolf does not understand how predator-prey thing works, and he really doesn't understand what a flapping thing is supposed to do or what he's supposed to do with flapping thing. So he literally was like, I just need you to stay still so I can figure you out. And he just put his mouth, he wasn't even touching the chicken with his teeth. He just had his mouth like on the sides of the chicken. He's looking at me like, what do I do with this? And I swear to you, like we have this one chicken who has decided that she is a rooster. She crows. She does.
Oh yeah.
She's mean as all get out. And then
yeah,
this
they'll
one
do that too.
Right? Yeah. And so this one chicken had been like the little like the pecking order is a thing. She was on the bottom of the pecking order. She faced down a wolf, and then she was like alpha. She went back there. She's like, yeah, you got nothing. I was in a wolf's mouth and I lived. It's
That's amazing.
It was the funniest little like farm story we have. Well, that we don't live in a farm area. We live in the suburbs, and one of our neighbors came over with this little like bedraggled looking chicken. He's like, is this yours? Random chicken. No, actually, this isn't mine. Let's go find out who else has chickens around here.
I live in town. I actually live right behind Kroger where I used to work, and we were allowed to have chickens here in town. So, like I said, I had chickens for a little while. Now I've got a neighbor, like maybe 5 or 6 houses down, that has chickens now. And then once in a while, I'll have like a Kroger employee being like, "Your chickens are loose."
We should not be selling them. Okay, so we were talking about unwell. We don't have like a lot of time, but I do want to like touch on, if I go in politics, we're going to be talking all day, and I'm just going to get just beyond. And everyone pretty much knows our politics on this show.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I'll touch on the wellness industry. Like the first episode, I thought was probably the best episode they could have started with, which was the
essential oils.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you know, lavender smells nice, and it can make you feel better. There's, you know, certain herbs that you could take that can make you feel better. Should that become a $6 billion business, and should it have that high of a failure rate?
There is one point that I do want to rant about.
Oh, please.
One point in that episode where I can't remember his name, but that really popular YouTuber guy with his wife, where they're essential oils. And he says, we only charge $75 a month for our classes. And he said $75 is nothing, even if you're on food stamps or SNAP. $75, you can find $75 a month. Just stop going to Starbucks for 2 weeks, and that's $75. Like, do you not understand what it's like to be poor? We are not going to Starbucks.
And I think we just found the problem with the United States, which is there's certain people who have a leg up, and there's like generational wealth built up. There's a safety net, and then they think they're self-made. And that's a very, like, I would never call myself self-made. I have generational wealth behind me. Does it look like I have? No, but I have a family who bought houses in the 60s and 70s because they were able to get mortgages. That meant that I was able to go to college without having to worry about whether I had a place to live. I did end up homeless, but that was my own decision-making power. But like, there's these people like that who are like, oh, I'm self-made, I can do this. And they don't know what poverty actually looks like. They don't know what an essential is. They don't get it.
Yeah, they're just so out of touch. Just let them eat cake mentality. It just drives
without
me
the kindness of Marie Antoinette, without even like her level of kindness and charity work. Like, yeah.
So that point in the episode, I paused and I just cracked up. I'm like, does this guy really think that people on food stamps are spending $75 at Starbucks every 2 weeks? That's not how any of this works.
No. And then you have the lady who was like, I had cancer and I took these essential oils and now I don't have cancer anymore. I'm like, okay, lady, I don't know you personally, so I'm not going to say anything. What I will say is give me the number of your doctor who was so shocked at this revelation, and I would like to ask them why they didn't publish this information in a journal. That's all I need. If you're going to tell me that this essential oil saved you from brain tumors, I do not have like, but I've been told this by people before. I've been told by people who want to like pray over my body, which happens more times than I'd like to admit. I had a friend who had cancer, and well, not really a friend, but it was a friend in another church, and they had us pray over them, and now they have no cancer. It's like, then give me the name of their doctor, give me their phone number. I'd love to talk to that doctor, and I want to know why they didn't publish. Why? Well, big pharma. It's like, Switzerland is not part of the FDA. I'm sure that there is someone in Switzerland who is a very brilliant doctor researcher who would love to publish that. Like, I have a real issue with this because storytelling is what we believe is true. That's how humanity works. Like, we're susceptible to stories, which is why the entire time I watched that, I was almost like writing down people's names and information. I was like, maybe it could work. Like, what is wrong with you? Rational brain, kick in.
For real though, the placebo effect, even when you know that there's a possibility of the placebo effect, being a factor, even when you know you've been given a placebo, it can still have an effect on your body. We don't really understand it. We don't know why it really happens as effectively as it does, but it does. Of course, placebo can only go so far, but some people don't really understand that concept of the placebo effect. So they try these things and they believe that they're going to work. So they see these, this is why hypochondria is a thing. They see these reactions in their body, what they had anticipated would happen because somebody told them that, this essential oil will make you less itchy or whatever. And they realize, oh, I'm not itchy anymore. That's the placebo effect, but they don't realize that. So they go around telling everybody else, look at this amazing thing that has, helped me in this way. It costs, you'll have to enter this multi-level marketing scheme to be a part of it, but it saved my life. But it was actually just placebo. I'm sure if you check
multiple things they were trying.
Right, yeah.
Like, there's one, I'll tie this back into tech because I find the placebo, I'm really into technology and science and I study things like crazy. But there's this new study that was being done on people who had, I forget which spinal column thing was out, but it was, there was no movement in the legs. There was no feeling below the waist. It just, nothing was working. So what they do is they strap people into VR goggles with those, like Superman legs, like they look like they belong in superhero movies, and they strap them into those legs, and the legs would move the person's legs, and they would, in the VR goggles for 6 hours a day, would be watching like they were walking for 6 hours a day while these things moved their legs. Now, after a few months, their toes started to twitch. They started to actually get like, we don't understand what the brain is actually capable of healing from if it's fooled. If we can
Yeah.
fool the brain. And like, this is so interesting. Like, this is like the stuff I live for.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we
I've
got
never
to.
heard that.
I get alerts all the time for things because my disorder is random and takes entire sections of my body up for random periods of time. So I'm always interested to see like what mobility stuff is coming in, if there's new wheelchairs that could work. Like my wheelchair is this like Professor X thing that I love.
Nice.
It's my favorite thing ever. It was obscenely expensive, but it because I had a really nice wheelchair that my parents like paid for. It was like, God, it's like $8,000. It was measured to my body, but I had to wheel it. And
That's not gonna work if your arms dislocate.
thank you. You know, I'm embarrassed that I did not think that through. Of my wrist dislocate by pointing at things. Maybe wheeling my entire body weight.
Yeah.
That could be problematic. No, so I got this thing called the Will CI, which was way cheaper than that, but still expensive. But it works as like, it's a dome, and you put your hand on the dome, and you can move it just by doing this. Like you can, yeah, it only goes 12 miles, but it's awesome. It can go over like a 3-inch thing. So if you're on bad asphalt or sidewalks.
Awesome. Yeah, where the ADA is, where they're trying with the ADA, but they haven't put in the ramp yet. Yeah.
Oh my God. Or they put in a ramp and it's like, I call it Cripple X Games because it's like, you are not surviving this. I mean, like a person I love dearly, she's one of the sweetest people in the world, posted on Facebook, and she's like, look at this inspiring architect that made this thing that was like ramps and stairs. So it's basically like stairs, but into the stairs is this ramp cut out. And I'm like, I know you're being sweet, but I would die. Please stop promoting this. I would die. Like you could not do this in a wheelchair.
Just thinking about it.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine like those like tight turns? And what if you have like any vision impairment?
I'm imagining those like mountain trails that people like
look like that. And imagine people are walking up and down on either side, and then you're in a wheelchair with gravity and trying to not go down the stairs. There's no bump to keep you on your ramp. There's no like ledge or yeah.
That's terrifying.
I know. It's like this going, I am so scared. Just I'm getting anxiety just looking at this. Please don't promote that. Like there's other ways to do this that does not involve death and dismemberment. It did look pretty. I will give it that. But that was horrifying. No, I was like, oh my, that's very well meaning. No, that's where you get like people who are like really well-meaning but don't talk to actual people with disabilities. Like they're like, oh, I will help save. There's literally a company on Pinterest, which is addiction I should get over, but they were a mobility company that sold wheelchairs and wheelchairs accessories and walkers. And I swear to you, every description was bringing light and hope into the dark lives of the disabled.
Oh, come on.
I can't with this. Like, where do you go with this? How are you that ableist and still working with disabled people? Like, oh, my goodness, savior complex much? Like,
no kidding. Like, what you think that, oh, God, that's depressing.
Right? Okay, so we will have to close this out on something happy. Parks and Rec.
Oh, yay. Somebody recently compared me to Leslie Knope, and I was very happy.
Yeah, I get April all the time.
Yep, well, there we go.
My son had been trying to get me to watch it forever, and I reached the end of Netflix, so I was like, okay, so now I'm on episode 2.
You watched it for the first time?
This is my first time. I'm not even close to done. I'm on season 2, episode 22. I am convinced my son is a young Ron Swanson. I'm in love with the show.
It's so good. It's like, it feels like family.
It's what I watch at the end of the day now, because like I can't, like after the RNC I was like spitting blood.
Oh yeah.
Like
and I've been like, now I'm normally totally plugged into NPR all day long. Right now I just can't.
I go on Twitter a lot because that's where I meet a lot of people to interview on the show, and like I also feel like it's important. I live in a very liberal area. I am friends with many very liberal people. I feel like I'm in an echo chamber. I like to know what other people are saying and thinking. And then I go on Twitter, and then I'm like, this isn't a constructive
No.
place.
Social media is just, it's really bad right now everywhere. Some places are
But
worse
on
than others.
all, yeah, like
Yeah.
I just after like Melania spoke, and like someone's like, she's the next Jackie O, and I'm like, okay, no, 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 no. And you don't have to bring up her photos to make that point. You can make the point based on empathy. You can make the
Mhm.
point based on what actually has gotten done, on what outreach programs were actually accomplished and finished. You do not ever have to bring those photos out, nor should anyone bring those photos out as a
Yeah.
reason on whether she is ladylike or not. I was so mad when I saw all these people putting those, naked photos of her up. I'm like, no, 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 no. When you use that as a reason for why someone is not ladylike, that can be used on any woman for that. She has plenty of things, including the I don't care, do you jacket, that we can
Yeah.
absolutely like decide is a bad thing.
Yeah. Her
We
choice
don't
of
need
men, for example.
I I I I
All
that
right,
any
I'm sorry. That was a low blow, but
no, I can't. I just literally I wasn't even like Obama is not liberal enough for me. Not
Mhm.
even by a long shot. And then we get this and I'm like, when are we moving? Are we moving? Please tell me we're moving.
Can you see my Bernie Sanders poster up
See,
there?
I don't like Bernie Sanders either. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay. To each their own.
No, I do not. I have had enough of men yelling at me.
Oh, that's fair. No, that's totally fair. Yeah,
And
I understand that.
a lot of his policies, I'm like, that sounds great. How long have you been in the Senate, and why hasn't any of this been voted
Mhm.
on or come forward? Like, you've had a lot of time to work on this, and you keep saying these things, but you're not telling me numbers. Like, that was something I loved about Warren, was she was like, here's my plan, here's how we pay for plan, here is all of my records on working across the aisle, this is how I get everyone to work with me. And he has like one of the lowest percentage points of people who are willing to work with him in the Senate. I was like, we need someone who's going to like work with people. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
the savior, my way or highway stuff has to go. We need team players.
No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. We
I
need
do
people that
get
are willing to work, like reach
yeah.
across the aisle.
Yeah, I liked
Compromise
Booker a
without
lot.
giving up, Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no worries. I was saying I liked Booker a lot because he has a lot of
Oh,
Sanders
yeah.
policies with a lot of ways that could happen. Like his
Yeah.
idea of
Now,
like the.
oh, I was
Oh,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
say, like, I got real excited when Andrew Yang made universal basic income an actual talking point.
Yep, I could have dealt with his ableism a little. His
I
ableism could have been
hadn't noticed
better,
anything
but
about that.
he needed some moments there. He really needed to spend some time with some disability activists, and just
I didn't
because you're
follow his
the
campaign too closely, but
just because you're the parent of someone with disability does not mean that you now are the voice of things, and you should
I
probably
do remember
like
now.
yeah. But the universal income is one of the most important things, and we have a city here in California that is actually doing it as a pilot program. They are doing universal income for everyone.
I hadn't heard about that. That's awesome. I'm
Yes,
like very excited
I
now.
am like viscerally all for universal income as a feminist issue, as a humanitarian issue, as a
We could
disability
throw out the
issue.
whole dehumanizing disability process if we just had universal basic income.
And it should start at 13.
Yeah,
Children
that's fair.
should have their own money. It should be like the idea that kids have adults who have their best interest at heart. We need to stop the fairy tale now. Like that would be awesome, and it should be that way, but it's not. And 16-year-olds often have to care for siblings, their own children,
Yeah.
themselves. I had plenty of friends who were homeless in high school. Like, yeah. See, if we all had the energy, we could run for office.
Yeah, it's actually what I was recently interviewed on a local TV station, and the guy asked me if you didn't have disabilities holding you back, what do you think you'd be doing right now? And I said, oh, probably I'd probably be a journalist or a politician, get myself in all
Right?
kinds of trouble.
No, like I would absolutely run for local government. I have a idea that I want to do for libraries, and I want it to happen. I want there to be a social worker in every library.
That's a really good idea.
I
That's not even something that I would even think of. But that's
It's where kids go when they're in trouble, when they don't want to be home. It's where abused people will go to make sure that they have a safe place for a minute. And if you have, and that's where a lot of people who are homeless will go search for jobs. If you have someone who actually knows the programs who's right there, that could be a lot of help, where eyes that would ordinarily be on what your search history is or your phone calls. Like, I just would love to get that to happen, and then to make sure there's maker spaces in every library. So we have coding classes, and we have spaces where we could like have like teens be able to start their own Etsy stores and like actually create a product that they can sell. Like, I actually had a whole program set up for a school I wanted to start. I had a whole business plan, and I got just too sick before.
Reaching out to like your local representative and sharing that idea with them?
Yeah, that would require energy.
It's true, and it does. It absolutely does.
It does. Like, right now, I don't even have the energy to get through the bureaucracy to get my passport fixed. I don't think I'll ever do politics because I don't have the energy to argue with my 17-year-old. Like, or not 17 anymore, sorry, 19-year-old. I do not have the energy to like argue with teenagers. And I'm like, I would die in a actual situation where I had to sit upright and like keep it together. Like, this has been an hour and I'm barely coherent.
Oh no, I feel you. After this, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if I'm gonna get a break before before we have to get.
Oh my god! Okay, we should stop now and do like another episode soon.
I would love to do that. If you're down.
Oh my god, your new podcast! I am so sorry.
Podcast. Oh right, podcast. That's right. I almost forgot. I'm not hosting it. It's not my project, but the National Organization for Rare Disorders has, I think, maybe today is the day that it actually drops. Possibly. I'll have to look into it. I know it was like in late August that it was going to drop, but the National Organization for Rare Disorders has created their own podcast called NordPod. And it's new, and I'm excited. I wanted to kind of plug it so that you guys can check it out.
Yeah, and so, please plug it here anytime. No, we do not have any proprietariness on any of this. That's why we made a network, was we wanted to make sure that more voices got heard. I also have the fond hope that we get popular enough that we can actually start hiring a lobbyist to fight for. That's what we want to do with money. Like, that's why we have a Patreon. It's like, we want to make sure we get our transcripts written properly, and eventually someday we want to hire a lobbyist to actually go in and fight for things. But no, yes, yay, rar, for having your own podcast, and please come promote things like that. We are not proprietary.
Yep. Yeah. Well, NordPod is National Organization for Rare Disorders podcast. The Rare Action Network is like another one of Nord's projects, so it doesn't really overlap with the podcast, but I wanted to bring up the NordPod podcast because I know a lot of people with rare diseases also listen to your podcast, so I think that it would be a really great way to, tell them about it so that they can check it out too. We definitely need to have another episode if we can talk a little bit more about.
Absolutely, this was so much fun.
Thanks. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
It was a lot of fun for me too. So please head over to our show notes. At the very top, you'll find links to pretty much everything we were talking about. And please check out Sunny's illustrations. They're fantastic. And buy Sunny's illustrations. Sunny needs to charge more money for illustrations. Buy them before she realizes she needs to charge more money for them. You will find the information for RAR and Nord there as well. Head over to Invisible Not Broken. Yep. I am Monica Michelle with Explicitly Sick on the Invisible Not Broken Network. Check out some of our other podcasts. We have Eva with Human Care. We have Jason with Discomfort Zone. And we have Dr. Phillips coming up, I believe, this month, with his disability on chronic illness, disability, and sex. And I'm trying to convince Tinu to start her own podcast. So bug her on Twitter on that one, too. All right, everyone, have a great week. Be kind, be gentle, and in whatever way it looks like to you, be a badass.